Check Podcasts.
Hi, I'm Bruce Williams. I'm the CEO of the Greater Victoria Chamber of Commerce. That's why this is called Chamber Chats, coming to you today, as always, from here in the podcasting studios at the Czech Media Group, one of our chamber champions. I would like to acknowledge, as always, that I live and work in the land of the Lekwungen-speaking nations known to us as Songhees and Kusapsum. And all of this is made possible by the support of Island Savings, a division of First West Credit Union, who are redefining what banking can do for people, for communities, and for the planet. 1994 was a very transformative time in this community because in 1994, Greater Victoria was host to the Commonwealth Games. So all those years ago, the eyes of the world were on this region, and there's still people that remember very fondly what happened here in 1994. However, it didn't all end when the Games ended in 1994. It's been moving forward because of an organization called 94 Forward, which is all about the legacy of those games. We're going to talk about that today, rather, with John Macmillan. He is the president of 94 Forward. John, how are you?
Hi, Bruce. Thank you for having me.
So let's say you meet somebody for the first time and you tell them you're the president of 94 Forward, and they go, "Oh, what's that?" What's your answer?
Yes, we get that a lot, and thank you for helping us get in front of that. The legacy is 30 years old, and it was put in place by some great people with some great vision. And our primary mandate is to provide opportunities for coaches and athletes, and in doing so, leverage the assets of the region.
And that's all based here, right? You're doing that all around Commonwealth Place, actually, right?
Yes.
So how, like looking back all those years now, how transformative was the whole episode of having the games here? Because it changed this place forever. So tell me about that.
So personally, I arrived to Victoria in 1998, so I can sort of speak to it from that perspective. And I came to Victoria and was drawn here by the programs that were being run as a result of the legacy. So I was drawn here, if you like, by the legacy itself. I think that from all the people that I've worked with and spent time with, you have a super proud and successful sporting tradition in Victoria prior to 94. So there are a lot of great programs and great stories and great accomplishments. But 94 really helps to boost several sports and programs into the next level and creates then this chapter that I'm very grateful for the opportunity to talk about the next 30 years. And you also have some sports that are starting to emerge. So a sport like triathlon, a great example, is really a bit of a nascent sport back in 1994. And then through the legacy and Canadian results and the great Simon Whitfield story, it shoots into the stratosphere of kind of importance in the sport mosaic in Canada, around the world, because it's included in the Sydney 2000 Olympics, where it makes its debut. So there are a lot of pieces that come from the games, not only these kinds of stories with Simon, et cetera, also the facilities. But I think one of the other things that some of the founders would speak to is really the putting Victoria on the map, very much a can-do attitude that came with all the stakeholders in the region that had to come together to execute the games. And we have one of our past chairs, Don Manning, talks about Victoria as the small but mighty. So I think there's a lot of that kind of attitudinal stuff that comes from the games that we hope is still very much echoing through the region, and that we hope we're a part of promoting that. And I guess if you're in the fortunate position that I'm in, or hopefully the athletes and the coaches that we're supporting now, it really is on the back of amazing execution by the people that brought the games here and executed the games. And we're talking about people like Ken Shields and George Heller and Jim Reed and John Walton, deeply involved in bringing the games here and executing it, and many others. I'll get in trouble for naming some names and not others.
Yeah, there's a lot of names we could drop that are affiliated with this from the beginning and even now. Terry Farmer, David Black, Susan Bryce, Trish Smith, Allison Partridge, all of those folks. But the legacy of all of this and the stories over the last 30 years. I wasn't here in '94. I got here in 2001. But the first thing that was apparent to me was the legacy that was left by the facility that you just met where you are right now. I mean, that's a huge part of this, right? The facilities that were created for the games.
Yes. So the pool itself is a magnificent facility. It's a place that Ryan Cochran grew up in and went on to represent Canada. Riley McCormick, a great Canadian diver. So it's had all sorts of people come through here, amazing events that have been held here. And of course, you've got the lane part, the dive tank, and then all the other pieces that are connected to it. Athletes have come through using the velodrome out at Juan de Fuca. And all of that, of course, is complemented by the great trails and other systems that are here in the region that are super well supported by the municipalities. And there's no better place to run trails, whether it's for middle distance or triathlon, for example, than in Victoria.
We're going to talk about something called long-term athlete development, and you mentioned all about coaches and things too. But we're going to talk about all of that as we continue this conversation with John Macmillan next. Our guest today on Chamber Chats is John Macmillan, president of 94 Forward, the organization sort of managing the legacy of the Commonwealth Games here from 1994. Tell me about developing sport culture, John. You talk about the different sports that are a part of what you do and the athletes themselves and the coaches, but sport culture, what is that to you?
What we're working on right now, Bruce, is really could be summarized in the phrase connecting the dots. And so we're looking for opportunities when we have a particular group or individual that we're trying to support. It's really around connecting the dots around that piece to try and leverage more value and improve the opportunities. So what does that mean? For example, we had a super talented Canadian boxer named Tara Smith. She was coming through, made a great charge to try and qualify for the Paris Olympics this past summer. She was in the top 30 in the world. In the qualifying rounds, she runs into a world champion and gets beaten, and unfortunately doesn't quite make it. But in the way that we're trying to build the model, we helped raise some money for Terrace, help provide services and support around her, and so really that's kind of the package when we're connecting the dots, and we do that for individuals and for programs as well.
We're going to talk about some international things you do as well as the local things that happen with 94 Forward. But that thing I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, long-term athlete development. Tell me about that.
Probably best to think of that as a philosophy for looking at an athlete across a continuum and to be super mindful that athletes move across ages and stages. And so you have to be super up on what are the needs of, for example, in sport like diving, the athletes come in super young, right? They're 8, 10, 12, 14. Your average international rower is probably north of 25 years old through to 30. So you're dealing with very different commodities there. And so the athlete development model is that framework that the coaches are super mindful of to treat the athletes based on their age and their stage. And so that would be physically, cognitively, emotionally. And so there's a lot to that and it goes on a sport by sport basis, but that's the framework that's used in sport is long-term athlete development. It's also a reminder that in many sports, most of the time, you're in the red wine business. And so it's not just polish a diamond and 18 months later you're all set. It can take years and years of hard work to make your way through the levels, and in that competitive environment, it's unforgiving, and so people are being eliminated all the time as they run up against amazing competition both within Canada and then international.
I had a coach at one time when I was a younger man who said, "You're not only here to win, I have to teach you how to lose," which I think was a direct reflection on my abilities and my skill set. But that is a big part of it, right? You have to understand that there will be times when you lose, when you come second, when you're not going to achieve what you set out to do. What's the culture around that?
So we have a great group that's connected to us. We speak in our strategy about leveraging the human capital in the region. We have the highest concentration of current and former Olympians and Paralympians that live or train here in Victoria. So we've galvanized several of them into a group we call the Formidables. And they're each formidable in their own right. And as a group, they're super powerful. Um, we try and connect them with all of the training camps that we host. And so you have these past athletes sitting in the room with the current athletes, and there's that great sharing. When we introduce that every time we've got a camp going on, my opening remarks to the up and coming athletes about the formidables is that the number one quality of the formidables is that they lost uh, more times than they succeeded. And we have them up on our walls, pictures of Simon Whitfield, and he's come through and signed, and Ryan Cochran the same. The thing that differentiates them is that they got back up again. So the inherent lesson in the defeat is to get back up and go again, and that's inherent in sport. It's mostly a paradigm of failure, and then it's a test of resiliency, and we think that those are super important life lessons. And so our focus right now is on encouraging as many young people as we can, drawing them into our strategy, and making sure that we speak about this frequently and loudly about how important it is that they keep showing up, they keep trying, and every time they fail, they get back up again.
I mean, in a way, losing is more important than winning, just from the lessons you learn from it, right?
No, life is not easy. So the sooner you get your head around that, the better. And sport is a great teacher for that.
Yeah. Tell me who some of the other formidables are. You mentioned Simon Whitfield. Kevin Light, I know, is one.
Yes, well, we were able to draw on generations now of athletes that have come through here. So some of them live away, and some of them live in town. And we'll bring in Gary Reid, the great middle distance runner, Canadian champion, and finished top five in the world. He's up in Kelowna or Kamloops now, so we'll fly him in once a year. Stephanie Dixon, the great Paralympic swimmer, whenever she's around, we'll bring her in. And then we have folks like Ryan Cochran, Aaron Willick from swimming and cycling. They've been around recently. Carolyn Murray, triathlon, Dom Setterly, and a bunch of the guys from the men's eight that win gold in Beijing are around. So we draw on all these folks.
Yeah, Julianne Zussman is another one. I'm on the website here on my phone, but
Yes,
it's a pretty
Canadian
impressive group
rugby.
of people. That's for sure. Canadian rugby, yeah. So you've talked about rowing, you've talked about swimming, you've talked about boxing. How many sports altogether are involved in 94 Forward?
Well, we have to pick and choose. And so, what defines our organization is that we're independent. And like I said, our mandate is to provide opportunities. We're not a granting agency. So, those are a couple of important reference points there. And we are really trying to get rifle and not shotgun. We don't want to go an inch deep and a mile wide. So we have to pick and choose. Right now, we would be looking at about 7 sports that are of interest to us. And so that's diving, boxing, athletics, skateboard, triathlon, and we're doing some work in mountain biking and some other early work in swimming.
I have to think our climate is a big part of the ability for these folks to continue to train outside all year long. Is that a factor?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're looking to leverage in our strategy 3 things. One is the climate, 2 are the facilities, and we have a great mosaic of facilities within the region itself. So it's you can get pretty much anything you need to get done one place or another around the region. And then the third piece is the human capital. So yes, much of it begins with the climate and being able to train here. And if you look outside today, today is a pretty good example of what it's like here.
Yeah, we're recording this on December the 4th, by the way. It's a beautiful sunny day across the
Yeah.
region. Okay, so there's
It's
the
my
local.
birthday.
It's December 4th is your birthday.
Today is my birthday.
December 4th is my birthday.
Stop it.
Who knew? Oh my God, we better take a break.
Happy
And
birthday.
happy birthday to you. We're talking about 94 Forward today on Chamber Chats. Our guest today is John Macmillan. He's the president of 94 Forward, an organization that's part of the legacy of the Commonwealth Games held here in 1994. Tell me about the international people that are on the ground here doing stuff too that aren't the locals. Tell me about that.
Well, I guess the model that we've had here and the sort of the power of the legacy has drawn people from across the country. So when you're trying to make your way up the ladder, you're eventually looking for the best training environment that you can find. So athletes have been migrating to Victoria for 20, 30 years, and the legacy's been a big part of supporting that and encouraging that. Many of them have retired and live here and contribute to our community. So that's super important. And along the way, they're trying to make that jump up into the international space and represent Canada on the global stage. And many of them do. They make their way into the Paralympics or the Olympics. And as I mentioned before, like Tara Smith, local boxer, doing great work, and just fell short of that Paris level. And like I said, it's unforgiving up there. A name that folks might recognize is Tyler Mislauchuk from the Canadian Triathlon Program. So Tyler's from Manitoba, but he's been training and using Victoria for probably the past 10 years, and he finished ninth in Paris, which is an amazing accomplishment. He wanted better, but ninth in the world is still pretty good. So there's all sorts of athletes that are trying to make the jump. We have a few coming. Martin Sobey and Aidan Longcroft Harris are on their way up in Canadian triathlon. One of them is homegrown. Aidan is from Victoria and is punching his way into the top 50 or 40 in the world now. And Martin Sobey comes from Prince Edward Island. So about as far the opposite as you could get. And both of them are here training full time. And they're going to be on a charge to try and qualify for the LA 2028 Olympics.
Cool. Okay, so we've talked about the athletes and what they do. Tell me about the mentorship of coaches within 94 Forward. How does that work?
So the coaches are the key drivers. I would say that the coaching profession is under some pressure these days. Um, there's a lot going on out there around safe sport, which you may have heard of, which is designed to try and make sports safer for everyone participating. The reality for the coach is that one wrong word or one misplaced hand can get you into quite a bit of trouble. So our position is that we're trying to do as much as we can to encourage coaches, knowing how important that role is. I come from coaching background myself, coached the Canadian rugby programs for years and worked with many others. And Ken Shields, obviously, big mentor and role model, comes from the coaching background. So we're doing as much as we can to support coaches within the specific project. So bringing in the top triathlon coaches to support those camps. And then we're also doing work across the different sports. So bringing coaches from 7, 8, 9, 10 sports together into coach development sessions. We hope that it will become a place that talented people are going to become future coaches, and that we can support that on the way through. The coach is the key driver.
Yeah, you talk about Ken Shields. Ken and Kathy Shields were UVic Vikes coaches, of course, for a long time. World-class people. They really are. So how do you finance all of this? Where does the revenue come from to make all this happen?
So super fortunate. Prior to the games being executed, part of the support from the federal government included a $10 million contribution that would go to a post-games legacy. So for the feds to agree to that and for people to include that in the bid and the setup was great vision. And so that got put into a pot. They ran the games George Heller and company ran the games at what you would call a profit or a surplus, with great support from the provincial government, obviously at the time, and that was another 5.5 million. So $15.5 million left over after the games, and that money got put in trust. And today we still have the money, and that's what funds these programs.
So it's like a foundation model. You have that sort of principal amount, and then the interest is what finances what you're doing.
We do, yes, and we're super fortunate. The fund is managed by BCI,
Hmm.
who are headquartered here in town, and Gordon Fife and the folks over there. We just had a board meeting yesterday, and some of their representatives were here, and they do an amazing job well north of $200 billion. We're a rounding error in there, but they give us the same level of service, and our returns have been very strong, and the service that we receive and support from them is fantastic. So we've been able to have the fund at somewhere between 25 and about 30 million over the last few years, and we carve a piece of that off the top every year, and that's what we do our work with.
Great. Yeah, BCI is BC Investment is the longer form for that. Just to wrap it up, what's the future of 94 Forward? What's going to happen going forward with 94 Forward?
Yes, well, we've just launched our new strategy, and in its essence, it's to build another generation of talent. We set off on that journey effective April 1. In our first 2 quarters, we ran 300 athletes through here across 7 sports, completing over 3,500 hours of training. So we have a runway through to LA 28 and probably beyond there. Brisbane 2032 would be next. So we're going to probably run for 5 or 6 years, building a generation of talent. We've already identified a generation in skateboard, which is sort of new work, and a generation in triathlon. And we're looking to identify and add a few more sports, and then we're gonna run with that. So the good people of Victoria can expect to see lots of action. We're bringing athletes and coaches in from all across the country. We're going to add in an international component as we get closer to LA, and we're really just kind of getting going. We're bringing business, if you like, to Victoria and leveraging the assets here. So we have a very sort of pro Victoria story on a unique legacy that is unique in Canada. It's as unique as Victoria is in the national landscape.
To find out more about it, you can go to 94forward.ca. That's the website. John Macmillan is the president of 94 Forward. John, happy birthday, and thanks for being with us today.
Happy birthday to you, Bruce. Thank you very much for having me.
I'm Bruce Williams. We'll see you again for another Chamber Chat.